The Western pro-life movement cares about protecting young mothers and their children from harm. But historically, that's also what the law is designed to do. Will those laws be restored? Yes, they will. And we will show you how on this edition of Life Matters with your host, Brian Johnston. Brian Johnston is the Western Director of the National Right to Life Committee. He has served in many capacities while advocating for innocent lives. And now here's our host, Brian Johnston.
Welcome back to Life Matters. We're your program on the right to life and the very real battle of ideas that is swirling around us right now, and swirling specifically around the idea of the right to life. What is it? Should it be enforced? Can it be enforced? Is it the job of government to ensure this right? Is it? Well, that's what the founders said. This battle of ideas is very real, and if you don't realize there's a battle going on right now, you've already lost. If you just take people on the surface for their own words without examining the depth and significance of what's meant, you're going to lose. You will lose. Today we're going to talk about a very important aspect of the right to life, and something that I think people often get mistaken over, and that is the emotions that swirl around this very important issue, this issue of taking human life, and specifically taking a baby's life. Very, very powerful emotions are involved. We're going to talk about moms and babies and emotions and protecting all of them. That's the purpose of the right to life. It's a legal right, and we need to make sure that we can have what we had before Roe versus Wade. Those were laws that protected the vulnerable, not just the vulnerable baby, but that vulnerable mother who is pressured right now by Planned Parenthood by hundreds of millions of dollars. If you live in California, that's just the California dollars, your tax dollars, at every level. Not just the state tax dollars. Many counties give money to Planned Parenthood projects. Many cities do. Planned Parenthood accesses your tax funds at every available opportunity, and their goal as an organization is to promote abortion. If you haven't seen that, please go back through our podcast. We talk about the history of Planned Parenthood, the goals of Margaret Sanger, and the current goals of the Planned Parenthood elites. They believe in using abortion as a form of birth control, and that means manipulating, encouraging, facilitating young pregnant women into a situation where they will have that child chopped up and removed. It's really that real. And once a young woman realizes that, and what's happened, what she's done, the emotional consequences are great. We're going to talk about that today. And we're going to talk about the need to exercise corporal mercy. You know, there is Christian doctrine about different forms of mercy. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. But there's different forms of mercy. There's acts of corporal mercy, and those are physical things you do for someone in the body. I was naked and you clothed me. I was hungry and you fed me. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. That's when you help someone. And there are young women, young mothers, and their children in great need. We thoroughly support that. We want you supporting them. But that's a work of corporal mercy. That is not going to end the human holocaust that is legalized under Roe v. Wade. We're going to make some distinctions in this program, and remember, distinctions are the very heart of learning. You have to be able to make distinctions. When we come back, I'm going to talk about some confusion that often comes with emotions and why we need to cut through the emotions, why we need to support those who are in need, but why we need to make sure that the laws will once again protect the vulnerable.
Life Matters continues after this.
Well, hi. I just wanted to thank you for joining me. You know, I have good friends, children, young adults, and adults that have Down syndrome. And they are so loved. Their parents love them so much because they're the happiest people you'd ever want to know. I really love them. I'm going to tell you something, though, that's rather frightening. The government of France has now prohibited showing positive images of Down syndrome children and letting parents know how lovable they are. That's an actual law in France. Here in the U.S., 80-some-odd% of Down syndrome kids are killed by abortion before they're born. In France, it's 96%. So we're not a whole lot better. If you'd like to help out, you can go to the National Down Syndrome Society, ndss.org, to help out. That's ndss.org. We really are in a battle of ideas, and lives really are at stake.
And now back to more Life Matters with Brian Johnston.
Welcome back to Life Matters. Remember, we're your program on the right to life, on the culture that's emanated from that singular idea, and on the battle of ideas to suppress and confuse people's understanding of what the right to life is. We're talking about emotions, about moms and babies, and about how we need to protect them. And one of the things I was very impressed by, a certain woman that came into my life, her name was Mildred Jefferson. I met her on the board of the National Right to Life Committee, and she was, in years past, the president of the National Right to Life Committee. She was the first black woman to graduate from Harvard Medical School, an extraordinary woman, I promise you. But she had something to say about crisis pregnancy centers and the need for crisis pregnancy centers. She said, "These are like the Red Cross. We are in a battle, and there are indeed killed and wounded in this battle, as we know. Babies are killed in abortion, and mothers are wounded, and fathers. People are wounded, and we need to realize that. And so these crisis pregnancy centers are good things." But she referred to them as the Red Cross in this battle. And as Mildred pointed out, the Red Cross never won a war. The Red Cross, in fact, has disengaged from the battle, and they're caring for the wounded. That's an important distinction. And Mildred, you can go back in our podcast. If you're listening to this on the radio, we also have a podcast. Go to lifematters.life, and you'll see a program dedicated just to Mildred Jefferson, an extraordinary woman, and she has a lot of other things to say. I want to dwell on that aspect, though, of the Red Cross and some confusion that has slowly slipped in to many people's minds. I was recently at a conference, and I've heard this more than once, but at this recent conference, folks said, well, we don't really want to talk politics at our church. Our ministry is to those women who've had abortions. And not only that, we don't like to talk about policy and politics because it alienates some people. This particular meeting was at a state capitol, and they said, we've got a lot of government employees in our church, and they support the Democrat Party because it supports their government employee union. And of course, if you listen to this program, you know that we're nonpartisan. I speak for an organization that's nonpartisan, but part of the responsibility is to explain what those parties do. And it's very clear right now that the Democrat Party has embraced unlimited abortion and has embraced assisted suicide, voluntary euthanasia, an extremely deadly medical practice. The Republican Party, in its platform, is opposed to medical killing. That's an important distinction. So if you're a Democrat, we want you to know that. And if you're a Republican, we want you to know that. We want you to vote for policies. But when a church says we're not going to talk about policies, we're afraid of alienating people, we want people to come and enjoy coming. And so they avoid talking about the policies. But if they talk about abortion, they'll talk about crisis pregnancy. And I was particularly surprised. Now, again, I've been at many memorials for the unborn. I think they're wonderful. I believe it's September 14th is typically celebrated nationally as a Memorial Day for the unborn. And so that's a good thing because these are human lives that have been lost. This particular church had built a memorial wall for the unborn. And this memorial wall was a place that women could go and mourn the unborn. And then the person explaining it said it's women who have had miscarriages then can mourn as well. And we feel that this is very appropriate. This is our ministry to the unborn. And it hit me, and I was a bit surprised. And I think it's very important that you realize this is not merely a battle about the unborn. This is a very specific battle. It has to do with why there are so many abortions now, and it's because of the Roe versus Wade decision. It's because of the government encouragement, not just permitting abortion, but under Roe and Doe, prohibiting states from effectively protecting babies. And in many states, as in California, funding the abortion industry. It's about the law. Now, more to the point, by also including the miscarriage of an unborn child. My wife had a miscarriage, and we mourned that child. I'm not minimizing that at all. But But something was lost in their understanding of what the abortion holocaust is about. Because there's a qualitative difference between a miscarriage and an intentional abortion of that child. This is a very clear distinction that must be made, and that Roe makes. Roe is not about miscarriages. Roe is not about merely causing miscarriage. This is about killing that child intentionally and making sure it's dead. So this is a very different act. Now, I have a friend who's Jewish and died recently, and I miss him, and his family misses him. What if I were to go to a memorial wall for the Holocaust in Germany and say, I want my friend added because he was Jewish, and this is a wall for Jewish people who died. So I want my friend on that wall. He died of heart disease. Well, wait a second. That isn't why we memorialize the Holocaust of the 40s. That was a qualitatively different way of dying. It isn't just because Jewish people died. In fact, remember, these were called crimes against humanity, not just crimes against Judaism. And so this isn't just about any Jewish person that died. The Holocaust is a very specific thing and had to do with very specific laws. And so this is critically important, to not confuse through emotions and our feeling of loss, not to confuse what this abortion debate is about and what Roe v. Wade is about and what our duty is in the civic realm. Coincidentally, just another thing occurred to me. I've lost my dad. He died of natural causes, but I actually know two different people. It's rather amazing that actually lost their dad as well. One was involved in a hunting accident, and he accidentally was involved in a shooting that killed his dad. Now, that's pretty tragic. But when I was in high school, I was on JV soccer, and a guy a year ahead of me, he was involved in a family altercation where he, in hot blood, shot his father. And that's pretty extraordinary. Now, all three of us lost our fathers, and I think all three should mourn. But there is a qualitative, not just distinction, and emotional distinction. There's a legal distinction. In those two latter cases, there were legal investigations. In the third and most tragic, there was a court case. And we have to be able to make distinctions if we're going to start protecting both moms and babies. We have to make distinctions. And if you're a Christian and you think, well, I just feel bad that babies have died, and so I'm just going to pray, and I just want these emotions to go away. I want people to feel better. That's not what we're about. We're about a very specific battle, in this battle of ideas. And if you think you shouldn't be involved in the political process, which is what this church said, this church with the memorial wall says, this is what we do for the pro-life cause. We're not going to be involved in policy. Well, I'm sorry. Are you not an American citizen? So somehow you think that you're a Christian, you don't have to have any civic responsibility for what's happening around you? I'm sorry, that's a very misunderstood principle that you're taking that somehow you might think is spiritual. It's not. It's very emotionally based, and it's a false understanding of the real issue. And as a gift of spiritual mercy, corporal mercy is helping someone physically, and Jesus did that a lot. But most of Jesus' ministry was in teaching people what's true and dispelling the religious confusion they had. So as an act of spiritual mercy, if you know people in your church that have that attitude, well, we're not going to get involved in politics. We don't want to talk about abortion. We don't want to talk about those candidates that are pro-abortion because it's going to alienate people. Well, you have a civic duty if you're an American citizen. And again, as an American citizen, you don't give up your belief in God. In fact, it's quite the opposite. If you have any United States money in your pocket, on every single coin and every single dollar bill, it says, "In God we trust." So you're not giving up your belief in God by being involved in the civic realm and by holding people accountable for the wrong ideas that they've put into the law. So do wake up on this. Very, very important. Don't let emotions guide you. Don't let emotions be your guide. Make sure that objective facts are guiding you and the principles of the law, which are your duty as an American citizen, as an intelligent Christian. You need to understand what's happening in your laws. Don't confuse what the right to life is. Bring clarity to this battle because it's needed, and you're in a very real battle.
Life Matters continues after this.
You know about our car donation program at California Pro-Life. We use one of the most respected programs in the nation. Go to the California Pro-Life page, californiaprolife.org. Scroll to the bottom and click on Donate My Car. It's that easy. Did you know you can also donate any vehicle, boat, motorhome, or even personal property? If you are nearing retirement age, you can also get a tax deduction by earmarking a portion of your upcoming compulsory distributions from your 401k. Just email us for information. California Pro-Life is fighting to equip California pro-lifers with understanding and the tools to again protect the unborn and other vulnerable innocents. Thank you for your help in this battle. Go to californiaprolife.org. That's californiaprolife.org for more information.
And now back to more Life Matters with Brian Johnston.
Well, welcome back. We're talking about moms and babies and emotions and how to protect vulnerable mothers and their babies. And that's through the law and paying attention to the civic process. We were talking about how some church folks, very well-meaning, they have decided, some church folks, that they're only going to deal with crisis pregnancies. They're not going to address the hurly-burly of what you hear on the news and television. Of course, that's what we're addressing now. That's a battle of ideas. Very few people want to engage in that. And yet, if we're going to protect those mothers and babies, we have to make sure the laws will again protect them. We can't ourselves stand in front of enough clinics. When I was a young guy, I actually did stand in front of clinics praying, and that was during a time when I didn't do this, but some people were involved in getting arrested and chaining them, breaking into the clinics, chaining themselves to the tables. And I thought, I'm not sure I want to go there. And what I realized is I don't want the police coming and taking my friends to jail. I want the police coming and taking abortionists to jail. And the only way to do that is to be involved in the civic process, because the police are going to do what the law tells them to do. And soon, Roe will be overturned, and we can have laws that will again protect these mothers and children. We've got to work for that. We've got to work in that direction. And so I want to remind you that compassion and emotions are very, very necessary. As Dr. Dobson said, and those of you who have read Dr. Dobson's books, a great writer, he was a psychologist and he spoke of emotions. Can you trust them? So he calls emotions indicators. But if you're led by emotions, you can make serious mistakes. I'll be honest with you. I've made mistakes in my life. Oh, I know you think I never have. No, but I have. I've made mistakes, and I think perhaps you have too. And if you're honest, I know for me, it's been almost always in the circumstances where I have allowed my emotions to be my guide. And we have to be willing to recognize emotions and yet cut through them so that we can see what the real issues are. Critically important to understand this battle, that you not simply be led by emotions, because that's not sound judgment. And many of you who are listening who are Christians, Catholic, or of any persuasion, emotions have become almost the coin of the realm for a lot of Americans and even a lot of Christians. Their theology is often about what makes them feel good. And the purpose in following God is not to feel good. You will, by the way, when you do the right thing. But that's not your goal. Your goal is to do the right thing. And you will feel good if you do the right thing. It might be a tough decision. It might be an emotionally hard decision. But emotions are not our guide and our principles. We have to have overarching principles. And again, the care of vulnerable women and women who have been emotionally hurt, very, very important. But that's a work of corporal mercy. That's a work of emotional support. And it's a wonderful thing. But if we don't change the laws, there's going to be 1 million more young women damaged next year, and the year after that, and the year after that. I can't stand in front of all those clinics. It's the purpose of the law. In a just government, it's the purpose of the law to protect those vulnerable. And that will happen in many, many states when Roe is overturned. But it's because the pro-life individuals there are focusing on making sure that the law will protect the vulnerable. So please remember, we are here in a very real fight. It's a battle of ideas. Make sure you have clarity as to what the battle is about. Make sure that you're willing to speak up against laws that don't protect vulnerable mothers and children, and speak for those who will protect the vulnerable, and for candidates who will protect vulnerable mothers and children from the scourge that is legalized abortion. Let me go over what we're talking about here. The importance of protecting young mothers and their babies is something that the law always did before Roe v. Wade. Yes, there were some women who had abortions anyway, but as Dr. Nathanson, one of the founders of National Abortion Rights Action League, admitted, he and they made up the numbers of illegal abortions that were done before Roe v. Wade. In retrospect, he estimated less than 100 per year illegal abortions were done, but they intentionally lied and created statistics that there were thousands. That was a falsehood. And the fact that that's done, the fact that people are going to get abortions anyway, doesn't mean you should legalize it. I've had church people say, you can't legalize morality. So why care about legalizing or making it illegal? No, the law is morality. The law reflects the morals and values of a culture. And you don't say that about car theft. You know that people will steal cars anyways, even though it's illegal. So yes, maybe we should no longer make theft of cars illegal. It's emotionally trying. I've had my car stolen. But the fact that cars are stolen anyway doesn't mean we should reduce the laws regarding this. We need to make sure that the law is instructing and helping people understand to not follow their emotions and just take a car that they want. Another example, a lot of churches want to avoid the cultural conflict of asking that abortion be made illegal. They want to blend in and not confront the culture. And so they'll pick other issues, a very common one, and thankfully it is illegal, and that is sex trafficking. A lot of churches say we're going to get involved in fighting sex trafficking, and I congratulate that. But that's illegal. Thankfully, sex trafficking is illegal, and I know of no advocates in the public sector, no secularists are saying they want sex trafficking legalized. So I think it's missing the cultural point. You're not resisting the culture. And again, the point is, if sex trafficking is already happening, does that mean we should make it no longer illegal? No, it's important that it be illegal, just as it's important that abortion be illegal. And in a sense, these are related issues because, in fact, sex traffickers use free abortions from Planned Parenthood and other entities paid for with your tax money. They use these free legal abortions to keep these girls sex trafficked, to keep them on the street. So it's important that we look to changing the laws to how they were before Roe v. Wade, when human life was respected. Again, a lot of churches fall into the attitude that this is just a woman's issue, and therefore we're just going to outreach to women who've been harmed. And that's a good thing. I said that at the beginning, I want to say it now. Women do need counseling. But I have to tell you, if you don't make a distinction as to what this really is, if you say it's just about losing a baby, and if you equate it with only that, you're missing the deeper issue. Women who have had a miscarriage and women who have had an abortion or been talked into abortion or maybe just decided on their own to just have the abortion, they have a very different emotional situation to deal with. They're going to need a deeper level of counseling, just as someone who naturally lost a parent is going to need counseling and grief counseling. But the person who accidentally killed their parent, as I said earlier, I know this has happened, they're going to need more counseling. And then someone who intentionally, in a moment of passion and anger, killed a parent, that person is going to need counseling. And it's qualitatively different than simply losing the parent. So if your church is saying, yes, abortion and the loss of a child through natural causes, these are issues we need to grieve, and these are the same issue, your church is missing the cultural battle we're in. They're missing the battle of ideas. In fact, they've confused ideas with emotions. And we can't do that. If we want to win this cultural battle and again protect young mothers and their babies, we have to be willing to wade into the civic realm. Ultimately, it is the laws that will protect those who are vulnerable, and that's the purpose of the law. So if you only see the Roe versus Wade decision and the abortion debate as affecting women, and that's as far as you see it, you don't see it. You do not understand what this battle is about and why it is so important for our culture and our civilization. And your church, as a church outreach, doesn't fully see its spiritual responsibilities in the culture. Again, I want to reinforce, helping women is a good thing, but it's not the right to life. You're not addressing the right to life, and you're not helping in the protection of these vulnerable women. We have to make sure that in California, for example, our government is no longer funding this grisly business. How's that going to be done? When we care enough to bring that to our lawmakers, and if our lawmakers continue to vote for it, when we vote them out. It's the only way. That's what you do in a free republic. If you don't exercise that right, you're going to have more and more and more abortions, and you won't stop it just by assuaging the emotional guilt and the emotional problems that do come from this serious mistake of having an abortion. So remember, we want to protect babies, we want to protect young mothers, we care about them, and we want to make sure that the law fulfills its duty to protect those that can't protect themselves. If you have more questions on the right to life, feel free to contact us. You can send an email to info@lifematters.life. Or if you have a question, go ahead and call our 800 number, 800-924-2490, and we'll be glad to answer that question. Tell us the town you're calling from and ask your question, and we'll get back to you with that, and we'll likely have that answer on the air. Thanks for listening to Life Matters. You know, every life is significant, and if you don't understand that, then you don't understand what our founders did in establishing our nation, and it's the freedoms of our nation that have echoed around the world. I've told you before, I've met people in other parts of the world that have told me that the freedoms of America is what has echoed through the world, and it allows the freedoms in the rest of the Western democracy. People are emulating this value, and the value of an individual human life is what is established in our nation, that the right to life is given by your Creator, and that the job of government is to protect the lives of those who are governed, and in particular, to protect the innocent lives. So make sure you understand what the right to life is. If you don't, there's a great cost. There's a great cost if you or the people in your community confuse what it is and get caught up in the emotional distractions. And there's a lot of them. There's a lot of emotions in this very important debate. Make sure that you clear the fog of emotions and understand the principles and the facts that are at stake, because life matters.
Learn more about everything in today's show online at lifematters.life, where you'll find all the resources you need to protect life. Life Matters is a production of the California Pro-Life Council, the state affiliate of National Right to Life.